Dumplings. The story begins with Mrs. Lee, a former actress whose career and marriage are fading due to her aging appearance. She is married to Mr. Lee, a wealthy but disinterested husband who is unfaithful to her. Mrs. Lee is consumed by a desire to regain her youthful looks, believing that this is the only way to recapture her husband's attention and social status. Hearing rumours about miraculous rejuvenating dumplings, Mrs. Lee seeks out May, a mysterious woman who specialises in making these unique dumplings that are said to restore youth. May is introduced as an enigmatic chef who operates in a run-down apartment, known for her secretive and peculiar methods. She is lively, charismatic, and unapologetic about her craft. When Mrs. Lee arrives at May's apartment, the audience is immediately struck by the atmosphere. Dimly lit, cluttered, and filled with the pungent aroma of food and herbs. May prepares the first batch of dumplings for Mrs. Lee, filled with a secret ingredient. As Mrs. Lee takes her first bite, the scene is filled with visceral sounds and close-ups that make the moment unsettling. May watches intently, her eyes glinting with a mix of curiosity and satisfaction. It is revealed that the key ingredient in May's dumplings is fetal tissue, sourced illegally through various means. This shocking detail is disclosed gradually through hints and interactions May has with other characters. The ethical horror intensifies when May talks candidly about her past as a midwife in mainland China, explaining how she discovered the rejuvenating properties of her unique recipe. As Mrs. Lee continues her visits and consumes more dumplings, she notices rapid improvements in her appearance. Her skin tightens, her energy levels rise, and her confidence grows. However, these physical changes come at a moral and psychological cost. Mrs. Lee begins to exhibit obsessive and desperate behavior, showing the depth of her dependency on May's dumplings. Mrs. Lee's obsession with maintaining her youth reaches new levels when she demands more potent dumplings. May obliges but warns her about the potential consequences, hinting at the moral depravity required to obtain more powerful ingredients. Mr. Lee, now noticing his wife's sudden transformation, becomes interested again, but their relationship is strained by Mrs. Lee's growing paranoia and erratic behavior. There are moments of tension where Mrs. Lee, desperate to maintain her newfound youth, contemplates crossing ethical boundaries herself. The film escalates when May's sources for the ingredients are threatened by legal and societal pressures. A particularly disturbing scene involves May negotiating with a young girl facing an unwanted pregnancy. This sequence underscores the film's critical commentary on how desperation, power, and the pursuit of youth intersect in chilling ways. The climax of the film occurs when Mrs. Lee discovers that the most potent ingredient comes from late-term pregnancies. Shocked, yet unwilling to stop, she pushes May for one last, more powerful batch. This leads to a morally devastating scene where the line between victim and villain blurs. Mrs. Lee's final act of consuming the most potent dumpling comes with immediate consequences. While her youthful appearance becomes flawless, her mental and emotional state deteriorates rapidly. Her obsessive behavior leads to grotesque scenes of self-inflicted harm and hallucinations, portraying the psychological horror of her actions. The movie ends on an ambiguous yet unsettling note. May disappears, leaving behind a haunting legacy and a chilling reminder of human desperation. Mrs. Lee, now trapped in a cycle of vanity and addiction, is left alone, embodying the horror of her choices. Her youthful appearance remains, but she is hollow, isolated, and mentally fractured. Mr. Lee's indifference continues as he distances himself, seeking comfort elsewhere, showing that no matter the lengths Mrs. Lee went on for his attention, it was never truly attainable.